Thanks and welcome to Pulso Demográfico. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Andreas Edel, the Executive Secretary of Population Europe. Welcome, Andreas.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's great to see you again. So, Andreas, let me start with an interesting fact. You know, in 2024, nearly half of the world's population voted in elections. And in almost every one of those elections, whether in Mexico, where I sit, or in India or in the United States, there was a really powerful unspoken force that was at play, and that was demography. So whether it's the age of voters, the anxiety about migration, the fear of shrinking nations, these aren't just statistics, but they're becoming, I guess, the very battlegrounds of political life. And this is the turbulent water in which democracy and demography collide. And that is why we're so happy to interview you today. You are really at the forefront of this conversation. And I know that Population Europe is dedicating their 2025 Berlin Demography Days to the topic of demography and democracy. And that is what I'd like to talk to you about today. I think, you know, for us, that really signals that the conversation has moved from the academic halls to the center of the conversations that we're having. And we are facing these profound discussions around the debates about who belongs, who pays for the future, and whether our systems can handle the strain of aging populations and new patterns of migration. So again, Andres, thank you for joining us. And let me get right to my first question for you, which is the fact that you are convening Europe's top minds on not only demography this time, but also democracy. Tell us a little bit more about what were the events or the pressures that led you to take this decision to focus the 2025 demography days on the topic of demography and democracy.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's really a very important and timely aspect we have to discuss. So whomever you talk in Europe or in the European Union or in Germany and other member states, everyone is concerned about these kind of disruptive movements. And this is actually not a secret. It's actually an undeniable fact that there are very strong disruptive movements in Germany, throughout Europe, also in the world. And this term disruptive actually explains why they are so dangerous. And first, of course, one is to see that these movements are usually not really homogeneous in terms of their political orientation. They include right-wing extremists, conspiracy theorists, opportunists, people who have felt that they lose safe grounds and which makes them more accessible to these kind of theories. But they are dangerous, definitely, because they threaten democracy at its core and are usually, at least here, they are also very often anti-European, and which is one endangering one of the most significant peace projects since the World War II. Just think about, I mean, my grandfather was in the First World War as a soldier. My uncle was a soldier in the Second World War. My parents were sitting in a bomb shell. I was growing up in the Cold War, and now we have this great achievement that Europeans work together and to protect the democracy, the territorial integrity, their common values, welfare state. I think we have to stand up and defend that achievements, but it's unclear, and that's what you just pointed out. The demographics of these disruptive movements. Who are they? Some people say these are wild old men. Some say it's young angry men. Some say it's people from regions which are left behind, but we have to find more out about that. And here, of course, population diversity matters a lot. I mean, people today have very different family backgrounds, educational attainments. They have different access to labor markets. They have children, or they have families, or they have not. And we have also to find out how old they are. So what we did in preparation of the Berlin Demography Days, which is more or less our flagship activity of the Population Europe Network every year, we did preparatory meetings where we discussed with journalists, policymakers, and others about exactly those facts. And it's really interesting because you see, it's a really not so clear picture as you would first imagine. So young voters, of course, are much less bound to parties than my generation was. So where often they are more flexible in choosing their options. Young voters feel often marginalized. Today, there was an article in newspaper saying that only 10% of the people are young people currently. So it's voters are feeling then also disregarded. And of course, young people also communicate in different ways. But they vote for a broad range of parties. And of course, they vote also for those disruptive parties. And this is something we have to think about. And also the established parties are often focusing more on the older voters, which more and more create a majority in the population. They are already now, but we should also see that we have a balanced, demographically balanced perspective on these kind of things.
Okay, well, I mean, I think it's really interesting that you are focusing the Berlin Demography Days on this topic. And clearly, as you mentioned, it's really something that is important to have this debate, because these are the debates that are ongoing in the countries, especially in Europe, that you're talking about. I mean, will the dialogue that will be held, will there be people from all different sectors to have these conversations? Because I think one of the issues that we face is that, in fact, demographic change can be difficult for people, right? And I think it's something that we need to discuss. And I'm wondering, in the Berlin Demography Days, will you actually have different voices coming together to discuss these issues? Or is it primarily one voice that will be dominant in these days? Tell me a little bit more about how it's going to run.
That's a very interesting question, and something we really thought hard about. So the substance of disruptive movements is that they are disruptive. So they come to such events not in order to learn something, to discuss something, but with a very firm idea about the world. And it's hard then to get to their hearts and to say, okay, we don't want to touch, to force you to something. We don't want to moralize or so. We want simply to talk about the evidence we have. And this is something which we always apply to these kind of things, so that we say it's important to discuss what, for instance, migration means for our societies.
Right.
And we need an understanding, and we need to communicate to people what it means if they have anti-migratory resentments. So not to say we tell you what you have to vote for. No, people can vote what they want, but they have to live with consequences. We have to make more clear what these consequences are. So let's say we bring together experts and discuss exactly about that. What would it mean actually if you would reduce migration to countries which are heavily aging? And then you hear all sorts of unproven ideas. So for instance, there would be a rise in birth rates. How should that be possible? I mean, we have now currently a birth rate in Germany of 1.34, something like that. So that means that, of course, also much less parents are born, potential parents. And even if we have parents born, then it means that we need at least 15 to 20 years until any kind of effect can be measured. So
absolutely.
it's
and
fine.
I think, Germany's sorry to interrupt,
yeah, no, sure.
But, Germany's a great example of the argument you're making, because, I mean, Germany being one of the strongest economies in the world, with very low fertility and aging populations, if it weren't for the fact that Germany did have this migration policy, the economic situation would be very different, I suppose.
Yeah, no, definitely. So that's one message which I think is important to make, that if you think back in history, you always can see that migration is actually not the exception, it's actually the norm. If you think about the names we have, if you think about, our office is in Gendarmenmarkt, which is a French word, because we had French immigrants in the 17th and 18th century. So we had the immigrants which helped us to build up the economy after the Second World War. So we had always this kind of population exchange and people coming in and people leaving and migration. And I think we should make people more clear. First of all, it's actually the norm. It's not the exception. And second is we should make people more clear that they can vote whatever they want for, but they have to live with consequences. So the closing of the hospital, or the doctor cannot find a person to replace him, and the shop has to close. The school cannot be maintained because of population decline, and the only way to counteract population decline is, of course, to welcome newcomers.
Right. So, do you have and will it be discussed during this conference? Innovative solutions that we've seen already. Any promising solutions that aim to strengthen democratic cohesion in the face of this demographic change?
Yeah, definitely. No, we had already preparatory meetings, and you can see some light at the end of the tunnel. Many people vote for disruptive or go for disruptive movements if they feel dysfunctionalities of the state. So you really have to give the clear feeling we have things under control, we have legislation, we have procedures, and nothing is. You can be assured that we take care and manage migration, for instance, in an appropriate way. Because very often that's one of the reasons why people vote for those movements. The second thing is that we have to better understand who is that actually, and also then talk to these people. It's exactly what you said before. Talk to young people, use their information channels and communication channels to make clear, okay, democracy means you can have your own opinion, but as I said, live with the consequences when you vote for someone who is obviously doing things for their own selfish motivations and give you wrong ideas. And this is something we as demographers can, of course, in such events like the Berlin Demography is, give more enlightenment about. So what is the demographic situation right now? How likely is it that a new baby boom will come? What is the aging patterns of the society? How can we counteract that? What is labor force shortage meaning for us? And how can we do that? And how can we also create a system of migration which is more balanced? Because very often it's an zero-sum game. So that means that if people move from one place, they are missing there. Very often these are the well-educated, mobile, young people. So we have to think about solutions in that regard, and that helps people to be more resistant.
Yeah, and speaking about zero-sum games, I think the other issue that you mentioned, it's this intergenerational contract, right? Having a new social contract based on intergenerational solidarity, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we're seeing also in this whole world of democracy and demography. That sometimes our policy choices are pitting older people against younger people. And it really is, it can create these intergenerational wars that we see. So are there any countries that you see really attacking this issue in the right way?
First of all, I would not speak of intergenerational war, because if you look on the evidence we have, people usually inside of their families don't have these issues. I mean, of course, you feel solidarity with your children and with your parents, and you take a lot of care responsibilities for each other. And so on, and you have your financial support whenever you need, and you live together maybe, and so there it doesn't matter so much. Then you have, of course, the pension system, but the pension system, which is one matter of intergenerational fairness discussion concerns, something we can regulate. I mean, for here in Germany and also in Europe, we have a discussion about that. Older people have to work longer. It's we have to convince people that it's not if you're well educated, if you're healthy, of course, if you have the conditions for it, then you can also work longer than you're actually supposed to according to retirement regulations. And so we currently have discussions about incentives, so to give older people who are actually already entitled to go to retirement, incentives to stay longer in the workforce, also to counteract labor force shortages. The second thing is we have to make sure that young people are more integrated into political decision making, which our parties actually do quite efficiently. So they make sure that more people are on the lists for the parliament, and that we have this kind of balancing the age structure of our society. But in general, I would not make a drama out of it, because actually, as you said, it's actually more a matter of the social contract and much less of a generational contract. The social contract, which means what do we invest and how much priority do we give solidarity in our society in terms of taking care for those who are disadvantaged, those who are unhealthy, those who are in need of care, and how much do we pay for other things? And so that's something we have to discuss in the parliaments.
Right. And I suppose some of these things are going to be discussed in the Berlin Demography Days in that case. Give us a little taste of what else you will be discussing.
Yeah, it will be a very intense, a very open discussion, by the way, because the best thing you can say is you don't know the outcome yet.
Okay.
But we know a little bit about it, of course. So we have 3 panels over the day where we invite people from political parties, people from the government, people from political institutions, foundations, to discuss, okay, what they see as the most striking points, for instance, how we can tackle issues you just mentioned, intergenerational issues or labor force shortages. And then we put that on the podium with politicians to discuss, okay, how do you refer to that? What do you think about it? And on the next day, we invite an international audience to discuss the outcomes and condense this then into a policy brief. And we'll exactly tackle all these issues we just mentioned. So how do we go for tackling labor force shortages? What do we do with the migration policies? How can we do that in a fair and manner within Europe, but also with the countries, sending countries? And then, of course, also these issues. So, who are actually those who are critical about Europe, democracy, about all these things? And you will find out that we have really to understand what is the educational background. So very often it's people who have young men with a lower educational background, but it's also more and more people who are well educated, and there are people who say would feel endangered by social decline, but actually a lot of people who have not this issue. So public servants, for instance, who are actually have not this issue. So why is that happening? Why are people feeling this kind of have these fears? And the other thing is that very often you have these kind of disruptive movements in parts of the country where you actually have literally no migration. They have these anti-migratory resentments, but they don't see migrants. So we have to tackle all these issues. And then also it's a matter of communication. So to understand what are the pathways we have to use to simply tell people the truth about demography, and make sure that they get this evidence and understand what actually the patterns of migration, aging, intergenerational fairness, and so on are.
Well, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. This demographic anxiety, as we call it, really is something that affects countries around the world, and particularly in Europe, around these issues you're mentioning, migration, aging. It's, a real source of anxiety. So I'm sure that the Berlin Demography Days will be an incredible place to have those conversations. Is it also virtual, Andreas? Yes. Can other people join in? Okay, yes. Super. Yes. So we'll make sure to put that in the link when we put this series on the air. And really just to thank you again so much for your willingness to come on Pulso Demográfico to talk about this link between demography and democracy and the increasing relevance it has in our world today. Thank you so much, Dr. Andreas Edel.
Thanks, Alanna.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
You too. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.